That is a long lead out on that. Good morning, everybody. Come on in. We see you out there. It's time for Comics by Night. Here's our real opening, and then we'll get to business. Hang on.
What was that? This is not a charade. We need total concentration. Now, once again, this time, with the...
There we are. Welcome to another episode of Comics by Night. Just to get this out of the way, Charles.
How dare you?
Greta.
Hey, thank you. She was in the news.
Yeah.
She says that Germany shouldn't shut down its nuclear reactors. She wants nuclear energy.
That's a big thing now.
She's about the only greenie saying that.
There's a big push for nuclear power now in the green circles because they've decided that it's safer for the world.
I thought it's been the last 50 years saying
serious.
It wasn't.
I'm serious. Yeah.
Bless.
I was on an incredibly long drive from Bowling Green, Kentucky, back to my house on Sunday after doing a one-day show and meeting Luke Stone face to face for the first time. That was a good time. But listening to NPR some of the way, and they had a pro-nuclear almost an entire half hour about how safe nuclear power was, except, Chernobyl and, 3 Mile Island and, all these other places. I sat there shaking my head.
Well, it's safe until it's not safe, and then you got a little 10,000-year problem.
That's all.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about 50 years from now, do you? So just get on with it.
Whoever's in charge will be dead, so they don't care.
Or they'll have 3 heads.
Yeah. Well,
the radiation will speed up evolution.
Yeah. Well, 3 heads are better than 1, so they'll be doing okay, won't they?
We'll get some giant ants. That's what we need.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, them.
If only big spiders, that would be cool. Giant spiders. Suddenly we're Australia.
Yeah, just like Bart Simpson when somebody tells him he's going to turn into a robot. He's really excited about that. So I want to see the giant ants.
Come on in, folks. It's time for Comics by Night. I'm your host, Randy Zimmerman. I've been doing alternative and independent comics for many decades. Now I'm podcasting and still doing alternative comics. So I am editor-in-chief of Arrow Comics, and we are turning out a lot of product. So having fun. Also joining me today is Mr. Glenn B. Fleming. Glenn, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name's Glenn Fleming. I'm an artist, writer, and publisher. I've got 10 books on Amazon, various subjects, science fiction, Kennedy, all sorts of stuff. But the one most relevant to this program is this, which details my trips to see Jack Kirby at his home. And with this book, you get a DVD of me actually in Jack's studio talking with him. You can order those only through me. So those you can get those now. I also created and published this character called Hatch, cartoon character. This is the cover of book 2, which will be coming out shortly. And I also publish Comics Unlimited, which is a 100-page quarterly magazine about comics.
Sweet. Also joining us today is Mr. Russ Leach. Russ, introduce yourself.
Hi there. I'm very tired. So I'm feeling you over in the States if you are watching this live, because I've been up since 6 working hard on drawing comics. That's what I do for a living. Very fortunate to be able to do that.
It's 10 in the morning where you are.
And it's 10 in the morning now, so I've been working for a good 4 hours. That's what I do. I draw comics. I'm currently on Batman, been on Doctor Who, done some stuff for Marvel and DC and Cartoon Network, BBC, people like that. Very fortunate to be in that position. So, that's what I do. You can find out all about me at russleach.com.
Also with us today is Mr. Charles Santino. Charles, introduce yourself.
Yes. What is it I do? Well, currently, Rammer, which you see on my head and back of me and right here, that's on Amazon, everywhere else, published by Marcosia. I am the writer, art director, and editor and packager of that comic. I've been around doing this for since back when comics used to actually sell a lot of copies, late 80s. 100,000 copies was the borderline of cancellation for Marvel back then. And I don't have 10 books on Amazon like Glenn, but I do have a bunch. One of them is Rammer, and a bunch of other stuff, including the first graphic novel based on the Western writer Louis L'Amour, and some other stuff. My Conan stuff is going to be omnibused pretty soon, so if you got $125 laying around, you can grab that next month, I believe.
Cool. Our headquarters at Indie Comics Network says nap time, Russ. They also say, good morning, gentlemen. The seemingly never-ending battle with insomnia allows me to join you this morning. You're welcome to join in.
What time zone is Indy in?
They are in the central time zone, I believe.
Okay.
So there it is, 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
So that lead out is so it can be played as the outro and gives people a delay for the broadcast to end. Because some days StreamYard doesn't want to close out quickly.
Oh boy, you're really trying to put Russ to sleep with that.
Yes, Steve. What, the one with the
I didn't understand any of that last blurb.
The new ICN promo. One is the lead. Who knows? I've got a couple other trailers here we will probably play before we leave today, but new trailers. So we'll see how that goes. Hang on here. There we go.
Can't nobody tell me nothing.
That's right.
That's my motto.
And your today's episode's theme is what makes good comics.
Well, you come to the right person.
Good creators.
That's usually
thanks, everybody.
Part of the
Have
mix.
a good day.
Yeah.
We'll see you later.
Goodbye.
That's it. We're done.
There's no one thing that makes it's a collection, isn't it?
That's why we have an hour. That's why we have an hour and a half.
Yeah. So we can end now. I've said that as well.
Well, get into it, Glenn. Tell us about it. What makes good comics?
I don't really know. It's like I said, it's everything. It's storytelling, art, writing, the pacing of it, all that kind of thing. It's I don't know. I couldn't really. I don't know whether I can really boil it down to one thing.
Need more coffee? It's 10 in the morning.
I probably do. Yeah, probably.
Well, you got an hour. You got an hour and a half to figure it out.
Yeah.
We're here to listen to you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you tell me.
Any input, Charles? Anything?
Yeah, well, I always have stuff to say. I have been thinking about this for the last hour and a half since I got up, and I like to think about this on the back end where the reading experience. I think that if you find yourself lost in the reading experience, you've totally forgotten you're reading a comic, you're just completely enveloped and engrossed and entranced by the magic of the story, however that happens, and there's nothing that's taking you out of the story at that moment, like bad lettering or jarring dialogue or whatever creates that magic that keeps you enveloped, and a book can do it, a movie can do it, and comics can do it. However that happens, that's what makes for a good comic subjectively for the individual that's reading it. And what I personally think goes into it is I think less relevant than the effect, because let's look at Robert Crumb, for instance. Let's look at one of his comics versus Jack Kirby. Is one better than the other? They're very, very different, but I think both achieve the same magic in very, very different ways.
Mhm.
What a wise, thing to say. That was excellent.
Thank you.
No, that encapsulated it, didn't it? Because exactly like you're saying, you can pick out a comic and say that's objectively good art or that's objectively a good story. And I think that is possible. I don't think it's all down to taste. You can actually pick certain elements out and say there should be a bar, but they're not always the same bar for every comic.
Mm-hmm.
No, and what's very frustrating is when you try to introduce comics to a civilian, so to speak, and you show them whatever it is you show them, and they don't. Sometimes they say, "Well, is that good? Is that good? Is that good art? Is that I don't know." Sometimes the language of comics is so it's so esoteric. I remember as a teenager showing my sister, trying to get my younger sister into comics and showing her particularly Neil Adams stuff when he started doing X-Men for Marvel, and excuse me, she couldn't follow it. I mean, she just couldn't follow the panel sequence. She couldn't figure out where her eye was supposed to go next. And I think sometimes creators lose sight of what is going to draw in a civilian, maybe for the first time, to comics. And you go back to newspaper comics and you look at something as simple as Peanuts. That will draw anybody in. Yeah. There's nobody that can't get drawn into Peanuts. And I think if even the most sophisticated creators were to take a look at that, they could learn something about how to tell a story simply, and so simply that anybody can be drawn into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it really is what's inside the panels that count. Okay, and I try, depending on which project I'll be working on, I mess around with panel layouts and the way that I'm driving the story through the panels. But what's really important is what you draw inside the panel. It's of utmost importance, to the point that if you go back and look in the Silver and Bronze Age and what have you, a lot of them are just 5-6 panel grids with squares,
or 9 panel grids,
or 9, and they're exceptionally exciting. I mean, I've got stuff up here with just like 5-6 panel grids, by Buscema, Sinnott and what have you, and the panel layouts they're just so simple, they're just so straightforward, and yet the pages sing because what's going on inside the panels. And I think people forget that. Artists in general, sequential artists, kind of lose that sometimes. They lose track of that because they want to make an exciting page, and they do want to, if they're thinking about what they're doing properly, they do want to guide the eye, and there are lots of ways of doing it. But at the end of the day, it's about that, exactly as Charles is saying. It's the storytelling. It's getting that over to the person. And if it's not easy for, like you say, like a civvy to get involved, then even the most hardened fan will find the experience a little jarring.
As much as I just praised Peanuts, I would also say that Peanuts is dialogue driven, and the pictures and the words work together, certainly, but it's dialogue driven, and in fact the dialogue might even work without the pictures. But comics are primarily, especially adventure action comics, a visually driven medium, and if the pictures work by themselves, tell a story by themselves, that's certainly important in the kind of comics that we're generally creating and looking at. And I think today, if I were to try to indoctrinate a civilian, I might show them Alex Toth. I think that his line work is simple enough that it might draw a civilian in. I don't know. I'm drawn more and more to his style, and I think that it might be easier to get somebody into comics with Toth than Adams.
Maybe. And speaking of a 5-panel grid, We're now joined by Brian K. Morris.
Good morning.
Hi, Brian.
Somebody had to bring the room down after all this intelligent talk, so here I am.
G'day, Bri.
Good day, my friend. How are you?
Well, we're already out of ideas, so you can take over.
You can see the room collapsing in your camera. Oh no, it's just that your fez is so tall; it's reaching the top of the camera.
I'm sorry, it's because it's on that point on my head. So,
yeah, I can put this on my head, and I'd have a mini fez or a Devo energy dome.
If you turn it upside down and get it closer to the camera, no one will notice.
That's where the perspective thing comes in, you know. Oh, but no, I've been enjoying the talk, listening to this, and some very good ideas, especially about getting civilians, and that's what I call people outside our creative realm, because it's kind of like the military in a way where we have our own jargon, and we can talk about things like continuity and things, and all the stuff that applies to what we do in our creative field.
And it's a less degrading name than calling them normies.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to call them that because, one, it implies that we aren't.
Yeah.
And secondly, if you're going to get new recruits, it doesn't do to insult them from the get-go. This isn't like a Don Rickles concert or anything. So, but yeah, and I'm sitting here listening, and I'm trying to think of how to get people from outside to read comic books. And Charles, you mentioned Peanuts. I think that's an excellent example. But it's like I talk to people that don't even know how to read comics, and in a lot of cases, they don't know where to start even, because the writing, and I'll trash writers for a moment here, don't know how to construct a story you can be dropped into the middle of, and understand what the heck is going on, and give you just enough information that you know what's happened before, even if it's just down to knowing how the character got their powers or what motivates them. Because Jim Shooter said something, Shooter has his detractors, but he said one thing I thought was brilliant, that every comic is someone's first.
Yes.
And like on Comic Book Spectrum, every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, my channel, thank you. Hashtag always promote. Master of the segue here. But anyway, no, I read a tie-in to the Stark Crisis event that's going on. And there's about a dozen characters in there. Now, I knew who all but one of them was, because I don't follow comics like I used to. But I could just imagine somebody just picking this book up, and it's their very first. And here's all these people standing around, like Jade, Obsidian, Alan Scott. Somehow they wound up with 2 Swamp Things. I don't know how. And all these, we know there's a lot of these characters are really interesting, but there's about 4 or 5 of them that go unnamed. And they don't do anything but, hang around. You don't know why they're there. You don't really know what the stakes are for this comic. And it just annoyed the hell out of me, because I'm feeling for this new reader who is, if this is the first comic they picked up, they would probably, call the tower and get clearance for takeoff, because that thing was going airborne.
I'm going to say something that a lot of people aren't going to like here.
Yeah.
I think that periodicals, like monthly, long-term, are going nowhere as far as story is concerned.
Agreed.
Because if you keep characters alive too long, eventually they become ridiculous. And I think miniseries are better ways of handling arts. In fact, the way that Minola did Hellboy, I thought was a perfect way of continuing stories with canon within them, but without having to worry about each month, every time you came back to the next periodical. And why I'm saying this is because that works in with the story you're talking about there. Okay, it used to be back in the day, back in the Bronze Age. I'll go that far back because I can't go any further. That you could pick up any comic, okay, and even if it was in the middle of a story, you could get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it was episodic. It was based on that Saturday morning sort of film thing where you came back next week to find out what was going on, but there was a story involved and you could pick it up really, really quickly. But now everything is so complex that it's difficult
ironic.
to pick up a single issue.
Or you congratulated the reader by actually ending the story in one issue.
Yeah.
You know, thanks for being here. We appreciate your quarter.
So if you put things into miniseries, it's easier for civvies to pick up a number one.
Exactly.
And
Because
Ryan,
they can pick
that,
it up anywhere.
that second Swamp Thing, was it a little shorter than the first one? Was one shorter than the other?
That's an awful personal question.
Because I hear there's a new swamp creature that was born out of a sump pump. Ready? It's the something.
And somewhere now, DC Comics is scribbling furiously. Going, this is gold. This is gold.
No, I'm sorry, Brian. Nobody from DC scribbling that down because that was creative.
There's a dad joke.
Yeah, their last good idea died of loneliness. I know.
Come on, guys, pack it in.
Old joke, sorry. But
yeah, well.
Anyway, well worth saying. Once you mentioned the second Swamp Thing, it's it must be something. Yeah.
That was a good one. I like that.
Yeah. Sorry to completely derail the conversation.
Most of the shows I'm on, we don't know where the rails are, so it's okay.
I am looking for evidence, and of course, I'm not finding it in the comics media because the comics media is so freaking competent. But I heard the other day that a lot of these writers up there at the big dogs, and I call them the big dogs because they are dogs anymore, but are actually, a lot of the writers up there are actually using an AI program in order to write. They put in elements, they get a script.
Oh God!
That's why a lot of this stuff reads the same over and over again. The same stale dialogue, the same self-insert kind of thing. But I haven't found any evidence of that yet. But I understand that's why there was a push a couple of months ago where somebody proposed a standard that wanted to make a standard for comic script writing. And the main reason for that was because it fit the AI program.
There's a part of me.
Why am I busting my hump writing?
Yeah.
Let me get one of those programs.
Because it's all rubbish.
And there's a part of me that's that's going, no, that can't be. And there's another part that's going, this explains a whole lot about.
It does, doesn't it?
Well, comics I've been reading lately.
Couldn't be any worse than what they were trying to write out of their so-called imaginations.
They don't need imagination now. All they're looking for anyway for writers are people that check boxes. And it's like, well, you hit this box and that box, you can write this character, and here's the AI program that'll help you.
Well, I think we can all agree, since we're on topic here, that does not make good comics.
No, it doesn't.
No.
It makes very stale and dull comics. Which is
how's this for embarrassment? How's this for embarrassment? I was communicating with somebody on Facebook, and we were talking about a particular project, and I said, I saw a proposal for that, and it had some really amateurish artwork. It was that guy's artwork.
Uh-oh.
How about that?
Yeah. How's it feel to be blocked?
Yeah, and I managed somehow to rebound from that, but wow. I was mortified. I probably only half as mortified as the recipient of that comment.
Yeah, I mean,
whenever something like that happens, we always refer back to Joe.
Look, everybody's entitled to be an idiot.
Yeah.
He's the master.
That's right.
Isn't it ironic that that Joe Biden would say that, because
yes. Yes. It's pure irony. Yes. Every politician could say that, and it would be pure irony.
That's completely. Right.
Bunch of
yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, this is why we don't discuss politics on
Yeah.
these shows.
Yeah.
Let's swerving
we're all
back
in
to
agreement
comics.
there.
Yeah.
How about those comics, kids?
Yeah.
Sorry, I seem to be
Comics.
stopping the conversation. Dead still trying to be entertaining.
Comics.
Yeah.
The cops are doing their job as long as they don't be mean to people who are actually being innocent. Then I'm all gravy, baby.
She
We all
certainly
gotta be
is all
gravy,
gravy
baby.
by the looks of her.
We need more of her on this show.
We do.
How much more can you get on?
No shaming.
Sorry,
No shaming.
A
I've
little
been
bit
up
less,
for a while.
We'll be treading the line between standards and practices.
Yeah.
We're playing practices but no standards. I get it. I know. I show up and things go to hell. So.
The Comics Network says yes, Russ, 100%.
It's everything I've said.
This is the reason manga is outselling comics. Confusion confusion is where to start. Manga keeps it simple. You start with number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they keep them in print forever.
Telling a story here. Yep.
Yeah.
So what if you have to read it from right to left?
Yeah, and it's kind of speaking of irony, it's kind of ironic that Japanese comics are easier for American audiences to understand than American comics.
Harder to read, easier to understand.
Yeah.
Well, once like Charles said, once you get used to the right to left thing, but they have a simpler layout. I think mostly because of the space they're confined to. And you can just fly through a manga book in no time.
Well,
whereas now it's like trying to you need a Rosetta Stone to figure out a lot of comics nowadays. So.
Oh yeah, you need a scorecard most of the time. But like Charles says, I hate being pulled out of the story, and I've always run into that problem because I keep going left instead of right, or I can't read the panel directions correctly on that page because I was supposed to go that way as opposed to going this way.
Well, as was said earlier when I got here about leading the eye of the reader, and that's where something like that is very important. Because I did the same thing. It's like, do I start in the upper left-hand corner like I'm used to, or do I start in the right and work my way backwards, etc., etc.? Yeah. But when an artist is doing like the little tricks, like something as simple as having a character go beyond the gutter in one panel, and part of their body is in the next panel you need to read. Something as simple as that.
Or looking subtle. In that direction.
Right,
well,
yeah.
You know what's the best way to indicate where the reader is supposed to go next? Mm-hmm. Is have an arrow.
Yep.
DC Comics used to do. Mm-hmm. I could never understand. It's like, wait a minute, can't you just lay out the page so I know where to go? Why is this page layout so bad that you need to have an arrow to tell me where to go?
Yeah.
I think, in all fairness to both sets of creators, whether they be Western or Eastern. They should be able to guide your eye.
Yeah.
Just like we're arguing for Western comics to be able to guide your eye, and we're used to going left to right. If you pick up a comic and it's right to left, and you know that it's right to left, okay, the artist should be able to guide your eye through the story. And if they're not, then maybe it's not as good as the other manga comics. Just saying. Probably get hate mail for that as well.
No, it's a good point, and that's something a lot of creators themselves don't see. That there are a lot of little tricks you've got to do. One, the artist has to lead the reader's eye, and I think also it's incumbent on the writer to, like on that right-hand page, the last panel, put something in there that makes them want to turn the page.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of little things. That's why I say writing a book or a short story, to me, unless there's a word count, that's easy. Because I can just sit and type and type and type and type. But there's so many rules that should be obeyed. I'm not talking about the ones that must be, but the ones that should be to create a good reading experience. And the good artists and the good writers, of course, they're all in this room, know all these tricks and know how to do it in a way that's like, aside from setting off flares and going, hey, reader, panel over here, you know? Or maybe somebody should do a comic like that.
You know, and you've also got the issue here. We've got some people who write and draw, but we have somebody like me who just writes. So and Brian, so
God's chosen.
You've got to have that coordination. If you're doing it all yourself, then I guess the writer and artist part of that same person has to be coordinated. But there's an extra element of let's use that word again, coordination, when the writer is not the artist and vice versa. I recently had an experience, and this has been going on for several years, which it's so frustrating to me that it's something that if I saw it in a movie or a TV show or read it in a book, I'd say, no, it's not possible. Okay. Part of the world building of Rammer is this future police state, and I designed a flag for the GFA, the Global Freedom Authority. They run the world. The flag is 5 horizontal bars. The top and bottom bars are black, the inner 2 bars green, and then the middle bar blue. And I send each artist the flag. They can't get it right when they draw it into the story.
Wow.
It's just 5 equal width bars, 3 different colors, and I give them the flag. I send them a JPEG of the flag. And I get the artwork back, and there's the flag flying flapping in the wind over a building, and it's wrong. It's the most frustrating, and everything else is right, but it's so frustrating and so incomprehensible to me. The flag can't be interpreted. You can interpret the character a little bit, the way you draw the character, but the flag is the flag. So I don't get it. If somebody can explain this to me, an artist can explain this to me.
I can't be doing with artists. They annoy the crap out of me. Just follow the brief, will you?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. So my wife hears me trudging up the steps again. Is it the flag again, dear? Yes. It's the flag. Another artist got the flag wrong.
Oh my God. Well, so many people use computers. Can you send them just like those images that you can like manipulate inside the computer and make it wave?
I really don't think that would help. I really don't.
Oh,
because they're determined to get it wrong. There was one artist that got it wrong with 5 different passes. And each time I resent him the flag, and it came back a little less wrong or wrong in a different way.
Wow. And you know what's incumbent upon you now, Charles, is that you now have to not write stories with the flag in it.
Yeah, well, that ain't going to happen because that's part of that's going to be part of the merchandising.
Oh, there you go. See, now if you explain it to them in those terms, this is merchandising. Maybe they'll get it.
No, that won't help.
They're paid by the page, so they're not paid.
Yeah.
Hey, artists.
But I love my art. I love my artists.
Mm-hmm. I love my good artists.
I love the fact that they are in faraway lands and know English.
Oh, that might be a problem right there.
Yeah.
No, they do know English.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is something that the world realizes that they better learn English if they want to be global.
They want to draw Rammer.
Yes, exactly. Right. Learn your English.
That's right. And it'll happen sooner than you learn their language. Right?
Yeah. Come back with the witch's broom and learn English.
Now what you do is put the flag on his back.
Yeah. That should be the audition. Draw this flag.
Draw the flag. You're in.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Draw me this flag in 3 different positions. Let's see if you get it right.
That's right.
I never realized how important guiding the reader's eye was until I read the Art Spiegelman book talking about Jack Cole. And how he pointed out that while Jack Cole was doing Plastic Man, it's obvious that Cole was working on a different level, because he takes Plastic Man and literally turns that into the composition for the page.
Yep.
Guides the reader's eye from panel to panel, back down diagonally to the, and across in a Z pattern, unbelievably. And I've always looked at Cole's work differently ever since I read that book. And
he used the stretchy aspect of the character as the way to guide the eye.
Yeah, to push the eye.
Do you have any examples handy?
I don't, but I can. I can get that here in a future. I really want to do another episode where we dissect composition on a page. I really do, because there's so many. We pulled up a John Buscema Conan page one time, and you can't help but see the composition on that, the way it was done, and how it guides your eye, because it's these guys. After you do it for 10, 15, 20 years, it becomes instinctual.
There'd be a lot of variety to show in that kind of demonstration. What comes to my mind is some of these Jim Starlin panels pages from the 70s, where he's got 36 panels on the page and it looks perfect.
Yeah. How did he do it?
Drugs.
Yeah.
Well, there's something. One of my favorite comics is Archie Goodwin and Walt Simonson's Manhunter, and it's really Simonson's first real professional job. He had done a couple little short things before that, but here's 7 pages in the back of Detective. That's like a spirit section story, where everything's so jammed into it. You get a complete story in 7 pages, and it's so tightly done. A lot of times he's throwing multiple, more than the usual 6-panel grid on the page. There are times when there's 16 to 20 panels on a page, and it's just amazing how he was able to squeeze that in, especially being the novice that he was at the time. I'm sure he's never tried to do anything like that since either, but it probably drove him crazy for a while. Yeah, exactly.
Well, when he got the script, he thought he was drawing a full-length comic, and then they told him, so he had to jam it all in.
No, they knew it going. He knew it going in, but that's also part of the power of the writer. Yeah, I know. It was part of the power of Goodwin as a writer, to be able to tell that tight of a story, and have a novice artist be able to just knock it right out of the park. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
It's a good exercise.
Yeah.
To give somebody.
Well, I always tell folks that's the importance of getting that Comics and Sequential Art book from Eisner, because he talks about that, and he shows at least one spirit section in there where he runs notes along the side. I did this panel for this reason. I did that panel for this reason. This shows this, that shows that, and it's just essential for anybody who's learning how to do this art form. So there's still information in that book.
That shows you the genius of those guys, because they weren't reading books telling them how to do it. They wrote the books, didn't they?
They did, yes, literally.
You mentioned Simonson thinking he was going to be doing a whole story, full-length story, and then ended up being 7 pages. That's what happened with that Conan story that Neil Adams did. He thought it was going to be a 40-page story, and he drew the first, 5 or 6 pages, and then he found out, oh no, this has got to fit in the regular comic, and so that's why there's 4 tiers on a lot of that, and it's still brilliant and it's beautiful. It was Conan number 37.
Okay,
but it's also helpful if you look at the black and white magazine size reprint of that. It's a little bit bigger. Supposedly there's a foreign edition where they split up the panels and stretched the story out to what was supposed to be the regular length. I would love to see that. I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but that is probably, getting back to indoctrinating civilians into comics. That might be a comic I would show a civilian, that one-shot Neil Adams Conan story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was part of the charm of the character anyway, is that it was a simple, easily accessible character. And the stories were always tight, usually 1 issue, maybe 2 at the most.
I remember when the Conan movie came out, walking out of the theater, this was the first movie, Schwarzenegger, and there was a couple of girls, women, I don't know, late teens maybe, and one said to the other, "I really like that stuff. I love all that medieval stuff." And I thought that was really interesting that they thought, or that woman thought, that this took place in the Middle Ages. I just thought, again, that gets back to civilians who don't know the medium. It worked for them, even though they had that misunderstanding of when and where this took place. I don't remember if the movie established that this was prehistory. I don't remember.
I seem to remember an opening narration of part of Howard's, talking about where in time it took place.
The Hyborian Age, yeah. Well, they were probably getting candy and popcorn at that moment.
They were probably on their phones and
this was pre phones, but it does say something about how something can communicate to the civilian without hitting them at the level that it hits geeks like us, where we know a lot about the Hyborian Age.
Well, the thing, when I read Conan, I must have read that it was the Hyborian Age in the text, but I never got the impression it was medieval.
No.
Yeah, it seemed more like the ancient world than that.
Yeah, long way back. Yeah.
Well, and I had swords, so it had to be medieval. So
that's it exactly.
Yeah, the Hyborian Age is so brilliant in its simplicity and concept. It takes place before history, and then there was a giant apocalyptic earthquake that buried everything, and then history started. What a great idea!
Reality.
What a great idea!
Probably what actually happened anyway.
Or
something along those lines.
Yeah.
But it does come down to education as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you've had some decent history lessons and you were taking notice,
paying attention,
that when it came to actually watching a movie and maybe listening to the dialogue as well, you would have kind of entered into it.
I don't think it's any...
what that does is that underpins what Charles is saying there, is that those people probably didn't take much notice.
But I don't think
didn't
education...
listen to the narration.
Yeah.
Okay, and yet they were still able to get into the movie in a very basic way.
Yeah. I don't think education comes into it, because I just think education is just teaching you the way somebody else thinks about something. I think it's called being stupid.
Don't beat around the bush, Glenn.
No, well, nobody else does. But stupid is stupid. Yeah. You can just because people are at Oxford doesn't mean not some of them aren't stupid in their actions and manner and stuff.
Look, everybody's entitled to be an idiot.
Exactly. Well done, Joe.
Well, I call them educated beyond their intelligence.
and again, they were thinking swords, so they just classified all of that stuff as
pre gunpowder.
Yeah,
but Romans had swords, and they weren't in the medieval times, were they? So,
well, but they would still be considered medieval by those people.
What the Romans ever do for us, eh?
Yeah, but that's because they're stupid.
The wine.
Yeah. Roads. All right, apart from the roads.
Aqueducts, yeah.
All right, aqueducts, underfloor heating and roads, in a judiciary system. But apart from that...
But other than all those things...
I do know they had a very interesting sanitary system. So.
The meek shall inherit the earth.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad they're finally getting something. They've had such a hard time of it.
But a great comic. Go ahead. Brian.
I was going to say, what was that line from Camelot? The meek will not inherit the earth, only the dirt. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to try to pull the conversation back to the topic. That's a great, great story.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Just going back half an hour to what Russell said about comic panels.
Yeah, before I showed up.
Yeah. In the 80s, when I published a line of comics, there was one artist who was a really good illustrator, but he couldn't work out the concept of storytelling. You know what we're saying about arrows and things. But I asked him what his procedure was, because he had all these arrows pointing to it, and I said, you can't do this. I said, what's the first thing you do? He said, well, the first thing he does is he designs the page, and he has a circular panel there and a rectangle. And you could actually tell what he'd been reading. If he was reading Steve Ditko, there'd be 9 panels, but there'd be a triangle. Who does the triangle panel? And he would lay out the page. You'd have a triangle and a, oblong one, square one, round one, and then he'd
put the story to the layout. That's crazy.
That sounds like that Adobe Photoshop thing where you could make your comics laying down the panel.
It sounds like he was designing a poster.
Yeah.
It sounds to me, Steve, like he was an idiot.
or he's an engineer, and he's like, we have to get all these geometric shapes in there to convince you I can tell a story.
It's actually one of those things.
Really good. He was a really good artist, but he was one of those really good artists that never actually did anything.
Yeah,
so I'd rather be a lesser artist and do something.
It is
than
one
be
of
the
those
best artist who ever lived and do nothing.
It is one of those things that's very difficult to get across to people who haven't done it. And so other illustrators who have illustrated and go, I wouldn't mind giving comics a go. And it's like, well, it's not just drawing. Yeah. Okay, that's not the way it works. You're a storyteller first.
Yeah.
The whole concept, you get the script, you read through the script a couple of times, you get a general impression, some things pop into your head as to how maybe you'd pick out certain elements that might pop off the page.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about how the angles and how they would work, how close you want the camera. And then once you've done all that, then maybe you could say, all right, they'll fit into roughly vertical panels, but also you're taking into account the page before. So if you're trying to make it interesting and flow, you might not want exactly the same grid. So you might think, I'll try and put those things happening in slightly different shape panels. Mm-hmm. But all of that kind of comes together. It's not like a step thing. You can't just step it out. It just doesn't work.
This is what I was saying earlier, that it's not one thing.
No.
There's a lot of stuff going on. And it's not one single thing that makes a good comic or a good story or a good film or anything. There's a lot of elements in there. So, but this guy he would purposely draw different shaped panels to the previous page because he was fed up of doing that size panel. And I said, that's got nothing to do with the size of the panel. It's to do with telling a story. And he could never work it out. He could never work it out. I think he only did one story.
Not meant to be a comic book artist.
He was taking the process and looking at it ass backwards.
He's being a smart ass. That's what he was being.
That too. You know how these petulant youths are.
There are some artists that are so good that even though a lot of what they do is not great visual storytelling, the work is beautiful to look at. I'm thinking of Esteban Murado, the Spanish artist who did all that work for Warren.
Yeah.
Now he could do visual storytelling. There's a lot of examples of his work where there is strong visual storytelling, but a lot of it is just beautiful illustration and so well drawn that it might actually be more appealing to a civilian than a lot of straightforward comic book stuff, simply because the drawing is so exquisite.
That's what Kirby said about the storytelling, wasn't it? He said the storytelling is everything. He wasn't interested that when Thor had 6 circles on his tunic, didn't he? The first Thor.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've seen the pencils of these. Sometimes you would see he'd only draw 4, and he said because he didn't have time to worry about things like that. That wasn't the point. The point was making the story flow. As long as you knew it, as long as you realized who it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what was it? The Hulk's number of toes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Kept changing.
What about that great page And the Fantastic Four, where the splash page where Reed's got his left hand on his right arm.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Everybody missed that, didn't they?
Yep.
Editor, inker, everybody missed that one.
It's easily done, you know.
Yeah.
No,
But isn't it a great drawing, isn't it?
And there's a huge difference
Easily
between
done.
missing a detail when you're pressed against a deadline and being
Yeah.
too lazy
Yeah.
to want to look at it and catch it.
I remember I did a Daredevil swing in for a tutorial, and so I had to do the stick figure and then the tubes and then the musculator and then the final Daredevil, and I put 2 left feet on him. It happens.
Yeah, well.
Anybody catch it?
No, the editor didn't catch it. Nobody caught it. It wasn't until like months and months later where I looked at the image and went, "Oh."
It was brilliant then.
Yeah, obviously it didn't. Didn't detract
Fantastic.
from it.
He's a mutant anyway. He switches feet all the time.
Yeah,
Is he a
there you go.
mutant? Is Daredevil a mutant now?
They're all mutants.
They're all mutants.
Good God. Good grief.
Not only is he a mutant, but his gender is switched like 5 times.
Yeah, well,
Do you remember when the X-Men were at the height of their popularity? Marvel was calling Spider-Man the non-mutant hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
They missed the golden opportunity, didn't they, as storytellers at Marvel? When what's he called? Reed Richards' son. Is it Benjamin?
Franklin.
Franklin,
yeah, Franklin Benjamin Richards, isn't it?
Yeah.
Both his parents, Reed and Sue, had been hit by those cosmic rays and all that sort of stuff. And I think he go into was it Power Pack or something that Wheezy Simonson did? Was it Power Pack?
I think for a little while, yeah.
Yeah, he was in there and he had some kind of power. Well, to me, if I'd have been writing that, I would have had him with no powers. Then he would have been a mutant because he wasn't like his mum and dad. Yeah,
That's actually a brilliant idea. Yeah,
Which is why I'll never see print at Marvel.
I approve of that. Yeah.
Yep.
But imagine if somebody at Marvel said, "Let's do that." Okay, so they did it. Let's say they actually did it.
Yep.
How long do you think they could keep that up? About a year.
Well,
And then he'd have to turn into a some sort of creature.
No, because don't forget that for the first 100 issues of the Fantastic Four, when Kirby was doing it, Sue Richards was always being saved by the others. So so those other guys could just keep saving him every month.
That's true.
And it could be a real pain, couldn't it? They say, "What the hell are you doing in this group? You can't fly, you can't do anything."
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah, but my dad's Reed Richards.
Yeah.
Get out now.
Get out of here. Yeah.
One of the developments in Fantastic Four later in the run with Jack that I loved so much was when Crystal stepped in for Sue.
Yep.
Post birth, and I just thought that was brilliant because it was a great twist that changed things but didn't really change things. And then when she cleaned the Wizard's clock in that one issue, pretty much all by herself, was fantastic. Just great.
There's that great when she makes her own costume, doesn't she? And they all come in and say, "What are you doing?" And she's putting it on, and you can sort of see a parody of it, couldn't you? Because she was saying, "Look up, Sue's not in the room now," and
but she didn't have the 4 on her chest. She didn't have the 4 on her chest. She had it on her belt.
Right.
And to show that she was not really part of the team. And then Kirby got it wrong. A few issues later, on the cover of one of the Doctor Doom issues where they're hiding behind the wall, the 4 of them, and Sue is there, as well as Crystal, and he switched their costumes. He got Sue and Crystal's costume, he switched it and got them wrong. Again, talking about just the guy working at breakneck, and nobody caught it.
But let's face it, who's going to argue with Jack Kirby?
Not me.
Yeah, nope. And Roy Thomas would do like a 6-issue miniseries explaining it. And he'd make it work.
Or nowadays it'd be 2 graphic novels, 12 issues long, just to explain why the logos were switched around. After they had a lot of pizza and milkshake, and talked about their sexuality for 3 issues.
I'm there.
And this is why I don't read them and haven't done for a while.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I tried getting back into some of the mainstream Marvels a few years ago. And, of course, I remember, like, the early Fantastic Four, in the first issues where they weren't Marvel Comics yet.
Yeah.
But, I tried reading it, and the continuity has become so impenetrable. And, and the thing is that that 5 years from now, they'll reverse it, and 10 years from now, they'll forget it ever happened.
Yeah.
Which is kind of drove home the impermanence of the events that go on in comics, these big events.
I understand that's why Avengers 16 happened and the Avengers team changed. It's because too many people kept writing in nitpicking the continuity. How can Iron Man be here when he's in a two-parter over in his own book? And it's finally, let's get them all out of there and just replace the Avengers with characters that we don't have to worry about the continuity of.
Did you?
And it's a genius move.
Stick them there.
Did you watch Dallas?
Yeah.
When Bobby Ewing was killed and he was out Patrick Duffy was out for a year, and then they decided to bring him back, and it was a dream.
Yeah.
Well, for me, when I was watching the series when he wasn't in it, I was just saying to people, just have him walk in. It doesn't matter that he got knocked over by that girl. Forget that. Just have him, because he needed to be in it, didn't he? It needed Bobby Ewing in it.
They figured out that their ratings dropped when he left.
Yeah.
Right.
So what they did was they were really, really clever and really, really cute and made it a dream. Made the whole series a dream. Pam's dream. Brilliant. Well, forget that. Just have him. Oh, I wasn't dead.
Well,
you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
The season before that, weren't they trying to solve who had shot JR? And then
that was obvious who that was going to be, because she was.
Yeah. Then the season cliffhanger the year or so after is, what the hell's Bobby doing in the shower?
Yeah, and then there's what was it that tie-in Knots Landing?
Yeah.
Where nothing got changed at all, and then all the I remember people were writing into the magazines going, "Well, what about Knots Landing? This happened because Bobby wasn't there, etc., etc." And it's like, that's the problem with tight continuity. Unless you've got somebody on hand like a Mark Gruenwald who can keep all this stuff straight, a lot of this stuff you're just digging yourself in a hole, especially with long-term sequential characters.
There was just to finish on Dallas, there was the biggest clanger in that program was when, I can't remember the names now because it's a long time ago. Was it Jenna Wade Presley? She was married to some Italian guy, and somebody shot him or something, and she was on trial. I always remember at the end of the series, she was arrested, and she woke up, the guy's dead, and there was a gun on the floor. Now, I'm not really a gun expert, but I know the difference between a Colt 45 automatic and a revolver. And it was a 45, not one of them smaller ones. I don't know what they are, like a small Colt, like the army have, but it was a small one. And that was on the floor, and then it's off for 2 months, and the next series comes on, and she's in court, and the guy's holding up a revolver as the murder weapon, and I thought, well, there's your case right there. It's the wrong weapon. So anyway, sorry, I digress.
I just found the second gun in the shower.
Oh, it was Bobby. It was Bobby who did it.
Same place that they found Bobby. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I missed that comic.
Dallas was fun comics.
Yeah, Dallas is great.
Yeah, it's like
I saw part of it being filmed when I was there. I saw Victoria Principal and the crew. When I was in Dallas, it was being filmed. Sorry, go on. But
you were there for other reasons, though. You didn't go down there.
I didn't go down there to see Victoria Principal. No,
you went down there to see the plaza.
And the reenactment. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Another stopper.
I'm thinking I'd gone down there to see Victoria Principal.
I didn't know she was there. I was just walking down the street. I thought, oh, there she is.
Incredibly cute back in.
She was, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She made some cash since as well, hasn't she? She's a billionaire now.
Yeah.
But anyway, comics.
I was going to say, I just posted a picture of Angela Lansbury in her youth. Wow, what a hottie. Anyway. That pregnant pause was brought to you by Comics by Night. Let's talk comic.
Our motto is, it's early, folks. You try holding a conversation this early in the morning.
Was there ever a Dallas comic?
No, I don't think so. At least not here.
Are you sure? There might have been a daily in the newspapers.
Right.
I was going to say, I would think that would happen over in Great Britain because you guys had so many great tie-in.
Yeah. I could imagine the Star or the Mirror or the Sun running a strip for that.
That was about the time the adventure strips here in the States were starting to thin out and die out as well. So I don't think that the only adventure strips that came out after that was like Conan and Spider-Man.
Yeah, and only Spider-Man lasted.
And Howard the Duck.
And Howard the Duck for a very short
gone
period.
Pretty quickly. Yeah.
Star Wars had a continuing strip here for a while.
Yeah.
One of the, just to get back into the comic strip thing, one of the things that always intrigues me is the brilliance and the genius of a newspaper strip, where you've got what you would have the sort of establishing shot. You have 3 panels: establishing shot, the story moves in the second one, and then there's a cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
And to write it in 3 pieces like that and maintain that, because I read some of those John Romita, Stan Lee Spider-Man strips.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
And the way they do it's fantastic the way they do it, because it's total. I mean, you've got 3 panels instead of how many? 20 pages of 4 panels. 100 odd panels to tell a story, to keep you engaged, to resolve a bit, but move it on, and then leave you wanting to buy the next one. And it's absolutely genius the way they do it.
It was all
once you get into that rhythm, though, it becomes instinctual.
Right.
If they applied that simplicity to the comics,
amen,
they might sell some more comics. You remember Spidey Super Stories?
Oh, yeah.
Genius book.
Yeah, they were great. My favorite sequence is when Thanos is led away by the cops in handcuffs.
Yeah. Yeah,
of course.
It was all that practice they had writing Twinkie pages.
That's right. Hey, those are great.
Hostess ads.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
especially the Hulk one where he kills people.
And after that, decades after that, when they did the kid-oriented stuff, which was always spin-offs of the TV animation, that stuff is brilliant. The Batman stuff, and there was some Marvel stuff as well. But the simplicity of those books, it wasn't quite a return to the simplicity of the Silver Age or the Golden Age. It was definitely something new and different, but they were basic, simple comics that could definitely engage a civilian.
That was part of the charm of there's a group of artists like that. I think Kirby is like that as well, that were able to strip everything down to the bare necessities in order to get that point across, move that story, and have fun with it. Even though there's a lot of Kirby that's very detailed, he was able to do that with his figures, and everything got knocked down to very, very basic shapes. You see people like Alex Toth and Frank Robbins and C.C. Beck especially, who are able to just strip everything down to the bare minimum in order to get that point across, to get that story rolling. C.C. is known for saying that he went from an advertising style where he was drawing refrigerators and everyday items down to doing the Captain Marvel style on purpose, because he wanted to strip all the detail out for the color to come through. Because in his mind, comics were bright colors. So Captain Marvel was a bright red and a bright yellow, and he was exceptionally good at it. Plus his style pretty much became, the house ideal. Wasn't necessarily a house style, because you had other people come in that were very stylized. Schaffenberger, I think, is one of the biggest that comes to mind. But he was also able to strip his stuff down to very basic, a very basic look, just not quite as stripped as CC. But
how many copies was Captain Marvel selling?
Millions.
Yeah.
4 or 5 million every other week. You look at the simplicity of Alex Toth's work, that it's just amazingly sharp.
But to be fair,
I just bought the collection of his the black and white reprints of all of his Zorro comics. Yeah. Which, again, that might be something I would hand to a civilian, especially a very young reader. I think a young reader, especially a boy, maybe 12 years old, give him that Zorro stuff.
And his and Bennett's Torpedo, 1936.
Yeah,
about gangster hitman.
Yeah, that's
Just
a little that's for a slightly older audience. Yeah, and also his Bravo for Adventure.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant stuff.
We were saying about how comics obviously got different elements to make it work. I do think that one of the reasons why those comics were selling so many back then was because of the entertainment or lack of entertainment. Like, there wasn't a lot of TV, was there?
Not yet.
So,
not yet.
So that was one apart from the fact that they were brilliant. That was one of the reasons because that was the only thing that a kid could get.
And there were newsstands.
Yeah.
Yes, there
was something like I
I
think the number was maybe something like there were 100,000 newsstands in across the country.
Wow.
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, and also a variety of genres too. Yeah. Much diversity, and which is another thing that manga has that we lack.
Yep.
I mean, mainstream comics is 99% superhero. If you're not into superheroes, if you just see that as long underwear fantasy, what's to draw you in?
Right.
They're a manga about fishing, I understand.
Yeah. Sport. Yeah. Fishing, sports, all kinds of stuff that, I go, why didn't I think of that as a comic?
You're saying about manga.
Yeah.
It must be doing something right because they sell millions, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, something you might be able to answer me this. As I understand it, the US has just had is still enjoying a paper shortage. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit.
How can the Japanese? There's no trees in Japan, is it? It's only how big is Japan next to America? So why are they not suffering a paper?
Well, they were probably smart enough to stock up years and years ago.
They're the reason for the
we might not hear about it either. So.
Another thing that's selling very well, blowing comics out of the water, are these YA graphic novels published by mainstream publishers.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
They're blowing away the sales of comics.
Oh yeah.
Barb the Berserker, the last Berserker. Look at that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Captain Underpants.
Obviously very medieval, that, isn't it?
And that's incredibly medieval. Yeah.
But DC and Marvel don't care because they're making a gazillion dollars from the movies.
Yeah, they're not looking at printing.
No.
If they cared about what they were printing, they would have gone through and done a big sea change a decade ago, literally.
Is the Fantastic Four still being published in Spider-Man? Are they still? Because I'm not involved in it at all. I just
There's about 6 different Spider-Men running around, including a female Gwen, Spider-Gwen clone running around. Yeah, it's gotten to the point where they're just a parody of themselves.
It's like I've said this before. The disappointment for me, and probably the main reason I don't read them, is because when I bought Spider-Man, it was about Peter Parker. He just happened to be Spider-Man, but now anybody who puts the costume on is Spider-Man.
It's costumes now, but that, in all fairness, that kind of follows on from the way entertainment is. It's all brands.
Well,
it's a brand, isn't it? Everything's a brand.
Here's a story.
Something else. Sorry, just to finish off with what I was saying earlier about having maybe mini-series rather than continuations of characters that are 40 years old, is that they run out of steam. And so they do become caricatures of themselves. And that's the danger, isn't it, of running too long?
Like back in the 50s when Spider-Man, or not Spider-Man, but Superman and Batman had their own pets. As well as every variation that you can imagine. Nowadays, it's completely different. They're about to introduce an entire Superman family where there's a Superman for every gender.
Well, there's
at least a dozen running around, including a pair of twins.
Yep.
Here's a depressing vignette from New York Comic Con. I stayed at the Yotel. I don't know if anybody knows what the Yotel is. It's one of these mini micro boutique hotels near Jacob Javits. So I get off the elevator to walk over to the convention center, and there's a guy in a Spider-Man costume, and he was great costume. and he actually had the physique for it. So we get into the lobby, and I said, "Can I take a picture?" So he says, "Sure." And he stands over there, and I get my phone up, and I said, "Give me your best Ditko pose." And he says, "I don't know what that is."
There you go.
And I thought, you know what? Why should I be surprised by that?
Yeah.
Because this guy is probably in his 20s and has never read a Spider-Man comic book.
No, he's only
seen the movies.
Yeah.
He has no, and I said it was the first artist that drew Spider-Man. So
And he didn't even
take
know who
the
he was,
costume
right?
off. You don't deserve to be wearing the costume.
I'm not leaving you burn it in
But
front of me.
it's at the same time that it's depressing, it probably shouldn't at all be surprising.
No, I don't think so.
No, not when you have interviews with people that are in like the number 2 slot at Marvel, and they ask her what her favorite comic book was or how she got into the business, and she goes, "I loved that X-Men cartoon that came out when I was a kid."
Yeah.
But what we're doing here is, and I think this is what the fandom does as well to a degree, is mix comics up with the publishers.
That's true.
They're two different things.
Yeah.
Okay, the publisher is part of a big corporate that wants to make money out of the brands that they've got. They're not really that interested in comics at all, because they're very small fry as far as sales are concerned. And we've had this conversation before, whereby the bigger the publisher, the bigger the corporate. It's not a matter of whether you get a green light on a book because it's going to sell. It's how much can it sell. So you've got to a point where they don't care how much comic books sell because they're just brand vehicles. Okay, so they don't really care about the sales, which means that they let their writers just offhand and let them do what they like with the characters, because it doesn't matter to the corporate. Just do what you like.
No, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt sales of the movie.
Exactly, it's not going to hurt. Exactly, it doesn't hurt the bottom line as far as the big sales are concerned. So
And-
to some degree, you've got to kind of say, well, that's their own rope, and if they want to hang themselves with it, that's fine. But they don't care about comics.
It's the same. It's just to go sideways a second. It's the same with the sport, isn't it? When the football have 16 different kits in a season, it's just so that everybody,
it's
people
all
will
about
buy the
selling,
kit.
Yeah,
It's not about the game. It's about making money.
It's about selling stuff, and to a degree, you can kind of understand why Disney, Warner Brothers, or whoever it might be. If you're talking about the larger publishers and producers, they're all about brands. They're all about selling toys or about selling kit. Okay, they are not comics. Okay, the creators in the industry, whether they be amateur or whether they be professional, whether they work for the big two or whether they make their own books, they're comics. And the fandom is comics, okay? So sometimes I think we're maybe a little bit, not harsh, but we shouldn't be looking to those places.
Not anymore. No. Yeah.
I mean, I'm there. I'm working with Panini and DC on Batman, okay? And I love it, all right? And I love the fact that I'm doing short stories for kids. It's my wheelhouse. That's where I'm at. And I just want that to work so much. But I've also got my own stuff to do. And all you can do is lead by example and get out there and make as best a comic as you can make.
Yep.
That's all you can do, and be professional while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Speaking of merchandising and stuff like that, what's the guy called who did Calvin and Hobbes?
Waterston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't he refuse to sell mugs and T-shirts and hats?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And he's been retired.
Yes, he
For
is.
20 years, hasn't he?
Well, technically, he's still doing an occasional children's book.
I wish I could be like that. If somebody wants to buy Only Death Can Save Us mugs, you can go get them now.
Exactly.
Along with T-shirts and underoos,
He did a strip for so long, so regularly, that was so good and so evergreen. He was able to retire and not have to worry about the merchandising on, because you better believe Universal was constantly pounding on his door going, "Hey, we got an offer for this," and he's like, no. So eventually he got to the point with like, "Look, don't bother me with this stuff. Not interested in this. This is what the property gets. I got control over this property, and this is all that's going to happen. You want money off of my work? Sell my books. That's it." So I like I've said this before, when I was doing my comics newspaper, I was begging the syndicate to let me run Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't, because Waterston would not allow the single strips to be run in the newspapers in the States. They could run them over in Europe or anywhere else, translate them however they, in whatever language they could, and make money that way. But in the States, he had already dictated that the only way you're going to be able to get Calvin and Hobbes is in collections or the incredibly large compendium volume that's beautifully done in hardback with a slipcase. That's got the entire work in it. But that's how he keeps that's his retirement, literally.
Of course,
he doesn't have to worry about doing anything else because he's that successful. And
he's also coming from a point of success, isn't he, as well?
Yes.
Yeah. It's easy to say that when you've got a global brand.
Because I've noticed in my life that it's the people who tell me I don't need any money are the ones who have got it.
That's why you never hear about anybody going to court for cutting the back vinyl stickers of Calvin pissing on things.
The estimate is that he walked away from between $300 and $400 million worth of merchandising. There actually was a few exceptions. There was a T-shirt for a Smithsonian exhibit that he allowed.
That's because of the exhibit.
Yeah, and there was a textbook called Teaching with Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah.
So what's he worth then? To turn that down?
Yeah, good question. But
if you had his money, you'd throw yours away.
Yeah, I have a letter from him on his Calvin and Hobbes stationery. I invited him to do a piece for me when I did a funny adaptation of Aesop's Fables for Fantagraphics back in the late 80s, early 90s. It was a different artists. I got different artists to contribute to it, and I invited him, and he sent me a very nice rejection letter, personally signed.
Nice.
I thought this is a class guy.
Yeah.
Who am I? I'm just some guy that's got a contract with Fantagraphics to do this funny thing, and he took the time and effort to personally send me a rejection letter, which I now prize.
Did he say I don't draw flags?
Well, that would have been the audition, and I would have said, I'm sorry, but I can't use you.
You're out of here, you talentless hack.
Yeah. He'd have probably gotten it right too.
He should be an expert at drawing horizontal lines. On that.
Now, if you want to see some real inspiration for where Calvin and Hobbes came from, believe it or not, there's a strip from the 30s called Skippy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. When you look at that, you go, "Oh my God!" Clearly, he saw this.
There's also an absolutely brilliant Warner Brothers cartoon of a kid with an overactive imagination that does his own spaceman spiff type.
I believe I'm familiar with that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it just goes to show there's only 6 ideas in the universe, and they've all been used
that's
lots
how
of
you
times.
apply them. Yeah.
From what I understand, Waterston made multiple pitches to multiple syndicates trying to get a strip job over and over again because he wanted to do a comic strip and wanted to be in the strips. And they finally pared it down to a family strip. And then somebody probably at Universal said, that kid and that tiger's kind of interesting, but everything else, why don't you pare this down to the kid and the tiger? And that's how and it took multiple tries. It wasn't just an overnight inspiration and here you go. But there's a lot of things that lead up to the brilliance that was Calvin and Hobbes. But the thing that really sold the strip was Waterston's eye and sense to make that strip evergreen, because you can sit there and read that entire library of strips, and I don't think there's a single one in there that you could consider dated.
Yeah.
No, and again, you're getting
the time period that it was created, and everything's just as topical and just as poignant today as it was when he created.
Getting back to civilians, there's something that millions of civilians who never read a comic book and never would read a comic book were interested in and bought the books. I was at a conference once and was sitting at the bar, and this a guy sitting next to me, and we got to talking, and he was a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan.
Yeah.
That's all he wasn't a fan of comic books. He was a Calvin and Hobbes fan. He had bought every book that he could find.
Yeah. Look at that. That'll never be dated.
Oh God, no.
Everybody I know needs what I'm selling.
Present company included.
There's one great cartoon. Talk about visual storytelling. There's one great Calvin and Hobbes cartoon where it's winter and there's a lot of snow, and he's done these horrific snowmen.
Yes.
Like run over by cars.
Number
and
of strips.
And the parents are looking at this and just shaking their heads, thinking, what are we raising? But every little boy could identify with that strip, and every parent could identify with it.
Mm-hmm. And he's got little inside jokes too, because you take one of those collections and you turn it over. There's a back page where Calvin is running like Godzilla over top of a small town, and I used to date a girl from his hometown, and that's his hometown that he drew in that strip. It's absolutely hilarious.
I thought you were going to say she looked like Godzilla.
No.
You dress up like that on Friday nights, and
But yeah, it's a very small town outside of Cleveland.
You realize how many beers you've had.
When I turned that book over and realized what it was, it just added to the humor. You didn't need to know what town it was. It was a great piece of Godzilla, Calvin literally stomping on the town. But I'm looking at that going, oh my God, that's his hometown. That's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Just genius work.
Oh yeah, and
that makes good comics,
artist.
though.
Yeah.
Great combination of words and pictures, and an eye for the evergreen. He wasn't the most detailed artist on the planet. He more than made an impact and more than made a living for himself. So
yeah. Well, now that's another problem with comics. The kid who thought he was Spider-Man didn't know who Ditko was. A lot of that stuff is dated. The fashions, the technology. We would find it charming, and it would be a callback to our younger years. But so many comics insist on being rooted in the here and now from when they're published that they don't think of their audience as 20 years from now. They don't think of comics have never thought of the longevity of comics, except now to have the characters literally spinning their wheels as far as development, unless you want to create a brand new toy.
Yeah. Well, just think we'll all be dead when Calvin and Hobbes is in the public domain and can be abused.
Way to bring down the room, Charles.
If you ask me, he's currently being abused every time you look at the back end of a pickup truck.
Yes.
The sticker with Calvin peeing on something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least we won't be around to see the people abusing him, because know that's inevitable.
On the other hand, I know for a fact that Jim Davis tracks down anybody that uses a Garfield like that. He'll track him down if he thinks there's any money that they're making at all. He's very guarded on that image. So I knew somebody who tried to do some T-shirts one time, and he wasn't even that big time. He still got slammed.
Well, Watterson has had something to say about that, Calvin and Hobbes. He said, I clearly miscalculated how popular it would be to show Calvin urinating on a Ford logo.
JD Rosario's in the house. JD, how you doing? Unstoppable Comics, folks. He's currently got a campaign running on, I believe it's Kickstarter. JD says, finally, I get to see Russ on a stream in a regular basis.
Finally, he's watching.
So last week at New York Comic Con, Milton Gripe said graphic novels made up 74% of all comic sales, a multi-billion-dollar industry. The problem with that is out of that 74%, only about 14 of them were from the big dogs.
It's all YA. It's all YA stuff.
YA stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and manga.
And 14's being generous at this point. But
yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't been, and I tell everybody, the person that's helping this art form right now, the most, in my opinion, is Dave Pilkey, who's out there working for Scholastic doing Dogman, and he does the Cool Cats Comic Club out there that actually teaches kids how to make their own comics, and that's going to put more people, more seats in the long run into this art form than anything that Marvel and DC has done in the last 20, 25, 30 years.
I agree, and
that first book is just solid genius, just beautiful.
That's replaced the gag comic strips. I mean, because kids are going to see that. They're not going to see comic strips in the newspaper. They're going to see that book.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
there's
Dogman
more
is
Walmarts than
incredibly
there are
hugely
newspapers
popular.
carrying comic strips anymore.
Yeah. And those books are everywhere. Every large box store has got.
Let's face it. Nobody's going to make comic books in the future. It's all going to be AI. So there you go.
Well, there you go.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, but it will, because like we've said before, you can do with the computer thing, you can do your lettering on it. Everybody's a letterer now, and all this kind of thing. And you just said about the AI script for a comic book. Well, what the next step is, obviously, it's going to draw it for you, isn't it?
Do we all know who Joe Staton is?
Oh yeah.
Okay, he did a Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah, I've worked with the man. He's brilliant. He just retired. He did a Calvin and Hobbes parody for, I think it was Grave Tales, which was a Hamilton publication, if you remember those. Okay. Look that up. I can't believe he didn't get sued over that, because it is dead on Calvin and Hobbes.
Well, there's a certain leeway for parody.
Yeah, but this is people have been sued over things that were further away than this was. But that is definitely worth looking up. And another Joe Staton reference, he did for 10 years. He did Dick Tracy.
Yeah.
Dick Tracy at its height, certainly made the creator a millionaire.
Yeah.
But it was in something like 600 papers.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, today it's in 25.
Yeah.
Wow. That's telling.
Is that just 25 in the States, or is that 25 worldwide?
I don't know, but I would guess the States.
Probably just the States.
Yeah.
Man.
Because I know there was a recent kerfluffle we've talked about that I'm on Luke's program with King Features Syndicate. That the Lee Enterprise is a chain of newspapers that goes through the South and through the very little of the Midwest, mostly in the West Coast and the South. They got fed up with King Features, dumped them all together. Under the guise of saving money, they took their 2-page comic section that 77 papers pasted up themselves and turned it into a half-a-page comic section with a half-a-page puzzle section that they do at the main office now and send out to the individual papers at a cost-saving move. But it also cut out 77 newspapers from a large number of artists that were creating strips, majority of which were King Features, because they cut King Features out as a syndicate completely. That they still carry classic humor strips that now the main office is able to keep an eye on. But King Features had been going through and making editorial decisions and taking a lot of these legacy comic strips like Mark Trail, Tank McNamara, and they just announced that a couple months ago that they were doing it to Popeye, where they were swapping out the artists for more almost like webtoon artists who are bringing diversity and inclusion into the strips. And so you can't do that on legacy strips like that are there for a reason and completely change the objective of the strip and expect everybody to keep following the strip like they've always done. So that you get enough complaints, the main head office gets so many complaints from these newspapers, they just throw their hands up and go, okay, everybody's paper has 2 pages of comics. We're going to send you a half a page of comics from now on and a half a page of puzzles. You just print that. And then your 16-page Sunday sections, which everybody that used to be the Sunday morning entertainment way back when. You'd always go out and grab your local paper. And some of these cities had 3 or 4 regular daily papers at that point. They'd buy one of every paper so that they could get all of the comic strips so that they can sit there and read it. Their 16-page section that they used to have now got cut down to 8.
Yeah.
As a cost-saving move, as what they officially said. But
Yeah, plus you can get all
Nothing
that
there
online,
that was
too.
King Features is gone. Yeah, well, you can still get them up online, but who reads digital? Some of the kids read digital, not very many. Not very many of the adults.
No, and if you want to see toxic fandom, look at the comments on those.
Yes.
Oh my God, those are
well,
vicious.
especially on the strips that have changed focus. People are up there complaining and bitching up a storm. And they don't care. They just keep printing the next one.
Oh yeah.
So, because it's just them toxic fans. That's all. Plus, again, there's a big problem in marketing, I think, out there right now in spite marketing. And I think too many people believe that spite marketing actually makes the money when it doesn't. It just makes a lot of resentment, and eventually it creates a lot of apathy, and your property just goes away.
Yeah.
That's what's happening right now with a lot of the Marvel stuff or some of the Disney stuff. That they make these big announcements hoping to get people upset. Oh, we changed the gender of this character, or this character is doing this now, or whatever, expecting that kind of a backlash because they figure it brings them some free publicity. When really all it does is bring them resentment and eventually just solid apathy. And they sit around wondering why they're not making any money.
Yeah.
You've got to cater to if you expect to make money, you need to appeal to the money. It's just simple business logic.
Yeah.
Also,
and how would you do that whilst making a great comic?
Also part of good comics. Those great comics are the ones that sold a lot. Captain Marvel sells millions of copies. The EC books in the 50s sell millions of copies. It's just, it's so vagrantly obvious. The problem is the big dogs, like we said before, don't care about the art form or care about publishing. So a lot of that, or all of that creativity now, you're seeing coming out through the alternative and independent markets. That's why there's so many great crowdfunders out there.
But don't forget, they're also saving trees.
Yeah.
Because there's no trees left anywhere.
Well, there's if the necessity arose, they could make paper out of hemp, and hemp is very quickly grown.
And then smoke it.
Just only certain parts of that plant, but
I know.
The rest of that stuff can be pulped down and made into paper if they want it. If it wasn't such a hot commodity to be able to control and charge more money for it, just like oil and that. And the reason why that we were talking earlier about Japan not having a paper supply problem like what we do, they've got trees over there and they've got ways of making paper. They do all of that stuff in-house. Our big problem is that bug literally stagnated everything, all of the supply lines throughout the world. If you didn't have a direct supply coming in, you got halted and everything went stagnant for a couple of months, and it's difficult to get that machine restarted once you've been running the same flow for decades. We get here in the States, we get the majority of our paper out of Canada because that's where the majority of the trees are. But here in Michigan, they went through and lumbered everything out in the 1800s, 1860s, 1870s. It was a huge lumber business here. One of our big trades was lumbering, but they started at the southern part of the state line and literally burned through the state and lumbered everything. And a lot of that wasn't replanted or looked at conservationally until later on, until the 20s and 30s, 1920s, 1930s, when Roosevelt had the Conservation Corps go through and replant almost the entire state. But up in Canada, it's just across the border for us. They make paper. It's just that their supply line got stagnated. Our supply line got stagnated, and it's taking forever to get things back up and running normally again.
Yeah. It's like I said before, who cares about 50 years in the future?
Yeah. Who cares about a year and a half in the future? It's just all about the now. So, hey, comics, folks. Anyway, Hojo in the house. I had a C&H collection as a kid. Calvin and Hobbes. Loved it. There's one in particular that I love to where they build a time machine out of a cardboard box. Naturally, I did the same.
Did we all?
Yeah, everybody did. It's that classic. I remember in Mad, Dave Berg did a strip where a kid gets a big Christmas gift and the dad's boasting about how hard it was for him to find it, and he had to go to all of these stores. And then the last panels, the kid out there, the toy is out of the box, sitting to the side and the kids playing inside the box.
Yeah.
I did that with a similar thing with my daughter years ago when she was a kid. She got a bike, and she kept the box. The box was next to the bin, ready to be taken away. And she was playing in the box, and she wanted to eat her dinner in it and things like this. I think somebody's got a photograph of her sitting in when she's about 6, sitting in the box with a dinner plate. And the bike's against the wall, and the bike cost a fortune, and she's in an empty cardboard box.
Exactly.
It's brilliant. A lot more exciting.
Yeah, Dave Berg lived not too far from where I grew up on Long Island, and sometimes his strips would show. You'd see the name of a high school that was, like on the next town or whatever. Frank Frazetta also lived in my hometown from about 1960 to 1970. And his son is approximately my age, so I probably crossed paths with him without realizing it.
Yeah.
So you're surrounded by all those really famous, successful people, Charles. What happened?
Yeah, I know. I don't know how it didn't rub off on me. Lenny Bruce grew up in the next town. Lou Reed was in the next town. Howard Stern, not too far away.
Wasn't Lou Reed in every town at the same time?
When he was famous, but he grew up in Freeport, which was right next to Merrick. Yeah,
I thought it was.
They're all Masons. That's how it happened.
Yeah, Illuminati.
There you are. Hojo says I still call people chowderheads.
Yeah, why not?
Every time I see someone using one of those Apple watches to talk to someone, I always think of Dick Tracy.
Exactly.
The violence and brutality in those early Dick Tracy strips is amazing. To think that was in newspapers.
And again, here in the States, it's not the violence that does it. You draw a exotic dancer with real small pasties on that throws mothers into tizzies. But you show a guy
that's where our UK brethren have it over us, where they didn't have a problem with bare boobies in their newspaper strips.
Yeah, well, they do now.
Yeah,
it's all gone now.
Get them out, as they say.
Yes.
Get them out of the strips.
No tits up, as they say.
That's right.
No.
Not now.
Not now.
Somebody gets upset, or somebody might know somebody who might know somebody who might be upset.
Yeah. Well, now I'm upset.
Yeah.
What do you think I was reading those British strips for?
Yeah. It's okay for you to be upset, Brian, but not those other people who know somebody who might be.
Those old Blackthorn reprints of Access still in high demand.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can understand why you'd be sort of impressed by that at the age of 14. But when you get a bit older, I don't get the whole sort of. I see a lot of covers on comics on Kickstarter with very revealing covers, and I'm thinking, porn's free on the internet. Why do you need?
That's a really good question, and that stuff sells. That stuff does very well on Kickstarter, but your point is well taken. Yeah, why? I mean, considering what's available for free, why are you going to spend $25 on that?
Why look at a naked woman or whatever? It might be a naked person, in a sultry pose that's been drawn.
Yeah.
Right. I don't get it.
It's a drawing. Yeah. Hey, look, there are people who fetishize Betty and Veronica. And look at how ridiculously simple those drawings are.
Yeah, a decade ago, when I published Crikey, I did an entire issue on comic strips, and it was things like Carrie and what's that one that Ron Embleton did, Russ? Wicked Wonder, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
I remember Wicked Wonder.
Yeah.
That was probably a different strip over here in the States. That was in Penthouse magazine.
Well, that's right. Yeah. Well, the entire issue was about that. And I did put some sort of censored bars across certain things because even I didn't want to publish that. Mm-hmm. But not that I'm against it. I just didn't want to publish it. And I got a letter off a guy really chewing me out about how disgusted he was that he used to buy crikey and sit with his grandson, who was about whatever, I don't know, 7, and he'd go through it because he remembered the kinds of stuff that we were talking about, you know, the Beano and all that kind of thing.
Sure.
And when he picked up this issue, I've got the latest issue, and he sat with his grandchild, and there's all these bare boobs and, you know, poses and all these things because we're talking about the cartoon strips and the artwork. And he went mad and he said, "I'll never buy your magazine again." And, you know, he changed my life. I've never got over the fact that he was never going to buy it again. You know,
but his kid might forever.
I tell you what, I bet his kid's eyes lit up. But
yeah,
anyway.
And 50 years from now, when you cut back on it again, he's going to write that same letter to the next editor. So it's that cycle of abuse you keep hearing about.
All I remember from that period having that, they literally saved the black and white magazines during the 70s. The Marvel magazines used to have breasts flying all over the place. And
Savage Sword.
And even all the other magazines, every time they could slip a breast out, they did it. But I remember reading one of those, an Carmine Infantino strip, and like going, "That's the weirdest breasts I've ever seen in my life."
It was triangular.
Yeah,
it's pretty much like a banana from the profile. And then later on, when I got the same story reprinted in an Essentials, how disappointed I was that they actually went through and drew bikini tops on all of the girls to make sure everything was covered, because those books were going into the bookstores, and you couldn't have.
Well, you know Frank Thorne's stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, he did science fiction nudie cutie thing called LAN, LANN, for heavy metal.
Yes.
It's been reprinted in book form 3 times, and twice it was censored. Now, if you're familiar with the uncensored material, it's not that hardcore at all. I mean, not really. But it just seems ridiculous that they would censor that stuff because it's Frank Thorne.
Listen, this is industry wide, not even industry wide. It seems to be across any content platform. Okay, so you sit and listen to YouTube music, and up comes Common People. Okay, and there's nothing else to do but then drink and dance and screw, and they take the word screw out. They've actually blanked it out, and you think, what? This is a protest song. It's the best protest song in the last 30 years. Okay, all right. It's a protest song. It's about the common people. All right, and you're taking the word screw out of it. Like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with all these people that are just censoring everything?
You're going to demoralize the youth. You got to make the moms happy. You know.
Back in the 40s, that there was a strip. I think it was in the Daily Mirror, and it called Jane. And when you see that, she always ends up naked. And to do that,
oh my dear, my clothes have all fallen off.
That's right. Yeah. to get from fully clothed to naked in 3 or 4 panels is quite, like we were saying before, quite genius. Yeah. Quite genius, isn't it? But that was the 40s, you know. So what was happening in the 40s? There was people dying and, you know, serious things.
Yeah.
And it's just it's pointless to me, that kind of censorship. I'm not saying there shouldn't be some kind of censorship, because there are some things that shouldn't be allowed.
And there was a high value in entertainment and people losing clothes. Yes.
Well, nobody had any clothes. There was no material, was there? Maybe that was the point.
Literally no material.
I don't think there should be censorship. Okay, there's legal and there's illegal. Okay, and anything that's legal should just have a warning message on it. It's like that guy that was complaining to you. Why didn't he flick through the book before he showed it to his grandchild?
Yeah.
Take some responsibility, mate. Yeah. Think about what you're doing before you do it.
Yeah. Okay? Was that the entire issue, or was it just one story?
It was the entire issue.
Oh, okay.
Or just thereabouts.
And it probably had it on the front cover and told him.
Probably did.
Okay. It's like people don't want to take responsibility for their own
I'll get it
actions.
and show you the front cover.
Oh, well, we probably should have had him do that, because we're already over.
Yeah. Oh, don't let him back on.
Not today, Glenn. You'll have to do it next week. there you go. Yeah, that's questionable as it is.
You know what
Oh my God! Oh,
as soon as I saw that image, Glenn, I went, crikey!
Yeah, I mean, it's more than half of it. It's
that makes me say crikey right there.
George and Lynn. That's a well-known one.
Yeah.
There goes our monetization.
Well,
it's there. Bits, naughty
I
bits.
I don't know what you can see, so I'm sorry, Randy. I don't know what you can see, but sure.
I didn't see anything. So
I got my eyes closed.
It's all art. That's covered.
Oh my God, she's got nipples under those 4 layers of clothing. Oh my God, I'm scandalized.
That's some pretty impressive nipples, isn't it? It's like,
and if it was a crowdfunded comic, you'd see them poking through the material.
It amazes me that people have under all this leather and everything. They must have like Lego bricks or something under there. I don't know how that happens.
Yes, and it's ice cold where they are. Yes,
ice cold Lego bricks. That must be uncomfortable under leather.
That's gotta hurt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's not that bad. It's not. It's all nice looking ladies.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Nice.
Tasteful.
Well drawn.
So,
Brian, tell folks where they can find you.
Right down here, risingtide.pub. It has a link to all my broadcasting and all the other stuff, including our free monthly insider information letter that you can sign up for. And also on my YouTube. I'm occasionally on Facebook, very rarely, but I'm also on Amazon. Got a couple new publications out, including one with thank you, Randy, with a very obscure character called the Blue Circle from Prose Press, and this just came out this week. Rising Sun reruns, where a bunch of us talk about the Japanese television shows that got us through our youth, both available on Amazon right now. Yeah, and I have an article on Ultraman,
Gigantor, all of those great characters.
Astro Boy, oh yeah,
Astro Boy, yeah. Yeah, I still have an Astro Boy poster up there on the wall right there.
Oh, love Astro Boy. Got the whole set of the manga on that. Great stuff.
Russ, tell folks how they can find you.
You can find me at russleach.com. You can find out about all my stuff there. You can pick up Only Death Can Save Us, still on Indiegogo, the original format version in issue 1, volume 1, and also the new volume 2, which will be out in the new year. Or you can get the re-edited version of this from New Haven Publishing. You can pick me up in the pages of Batman, currently out in the UK and Europe soon. And you can also pick up my last entry in Doctor Who magazine for a while. I've just finished a strip there. Other than that, just find me on the social medias. All of it you can pick up through russleach.com.
Cool. Charles, tell folks how they can find you.
Rammer, the Master Thief in a Future Police State, on Amazon right now. The price varies depending on algorithms that Amazon uses that I don't understand. You can find me on Facebook and sometimes Twitter and Instagram, but the best place to go is to search for my name on Amazon. You'll find a lot of stuff.
Sweet. Glenn, tell folks how they can find you.
Yeah, usual places like everybody, mainly on Facebook and Amazon. All my books and magazines are there. You can find me on podcasts like this, and I have my own podcast on Thursdays on Ted Davis Artistry at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and I'm on various other podcasts as well. So just like with Charles, just if you put my name in there, I'm sure a few things will come up into the Google thing.
Ted had a link to show up today. He said he'd be here if he could wake up fast enough, apparently.
Yeah, when I said to you last night, I'd forgotten the time difference because it's very early where you are. So
it's crazy early, isn't it, Brian?
Yes, it is. And I've been up already as we're recording this. By when we end the show, I will have been up for about 4 hours.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
So is that
I've been up 7 hours.
Artist writer's hours or the old cliche Rust never sleeps?
In my case, my wife gets up early, so
yeah, normally that's the case for me. My wife gets up early, but no, today and yesterday and the day before actually.
That's why I volunteered to do this podcast this early in the morning. Is because I take my wife in at 4:30, so I'm able to be. I'm home and usually awake at 5 o'clock. So.
Well, I appreciate it because now I can try to outdo Scott Rosema as far as appearances go.
Nobody
so.
can outdo Scott Rosema.
No one can outdo.
Yeah,
No
I keep joking that Scott and I are going to start our own show, but nobody will show up.
There are things, Brian. There are things, and then there's Scott Rosema.
There are. I love the guy.
Scott will be on soon to talk about it. One of these days, really soon, because of StreamYard, I keep wanting to do this so bad. Do an episode of Comic Book Squares. We get 9 people in a tent down below that we can rotate back and forth. We'll shoot out comic book trivia questions to the person called in the right square, and we'll replace them with their little stop cam avatar there with an O and an X. I think that would be hilarious.
We could do that.
I'm in. I am so in.
Yeah, I'm in.
That would be great for some like Saturday night or Friday night to do. It'd just be hilarious to pull off. Yeah. That would be great. Get somebody in the Paul Lynde Square and the old Charlie Weaver Square. It'd be great.
God, I know who they'll be.
That would be you, my friend. That would be
It
you,
would be
Charlie
me.
Weaver Square.
Because nobody can do Paul Lynde at all.
All right, everybody, we need to go. Thank you so much for watching the Comics by Night broadcast for 14th of October. Yesterday was my death day. It was a year ago yesterday that I went to the emergency room, and
oh wow,
they wheeled me in, sat me in the C room, and I don't want to say that name because I know it inflares the YouTube algorithms. Sat there. They stuck me in that room for 8 hours. So if I didn't have it, I got it then. So wheeled me out, and I don't remember nothing, thank goodness, except for crazy dreams that, I have to do a book just so I can get all of them down on paper. And don't remember waking up until November 23rd. Wow. That's the next date that I remember actually being in this reality. Other than that, I was in woohoo land. Wow. Lots of great drugs, I'm telling you. They were feeding me fentanyl and who knows what else. I understand I owe my life to a drug named Hadnol that they gave to me twice when I was they figured I was gone twice and it was a last resort thing, and I came back both times. So thank goodness for that drug. So back here. So folks, thanks a lot for listening in. We'll be back next Friday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk more about comics and wherever else this conversation drags us off to. Sunday mornings, I also do a show called the Sunday Funnies, where we talk about the comics, the actual comics themselves that we love, that have inspired us, that put that gleam in our eye and keep us at the drawing board. This Sunday, I was just at Bowling Green, Kentucky for a show and happened to stop by a half-off bookstore.
Ooh.
And picked up a bunch of comics as far back as the 80s. And I'm going through the bin going, please don't let there be anything here that I did. And I like going through. I found one, but we'll show those books off Sunday morning, Sunday Funnies, 9 a.m. A lot of great stuff, most of which nobody's heard of, that were out during the 80s, or very few people remember. Brian and I remember. Glenn might remember if he was in the indie and alternative scene back during that days, but it was obvious some longtime collector or some comic shop decided to empty out their back stock of all of this stuff that they think that they'd never sell. And I ended up picking it up for 50 cents a piece.
Nice.
So anyway, we'll go through that this Sunday morning. It's Sunday Funnies, 9 a.m. here on the Indie Comics Network and over on YouTube. And I also do another show called the Zimcast on Wednesday nights, where we talk more about the business, a little bit more opinionated, a little bit more angry than what we are here, usually. But that was fun. We had a show, our last show Wednesday night was about priorities and how a lot of people's current priorities as to how this market works are very askew, because there's been a way to get into this business that everybody thinks has been there for the last 30 years, and it's not there anymore. The icons are gone. The well has been tainted, and it's time, if you want to work in this business, to figure out your own way and make your own way in this business. And you don't have to do that by having to work as a cog for other people's properties. And it was a great show. I hope people go back and listen in. I thought it was a really good episode. But I love this episode too. Deeply appreciate everybody being here. We're gonna go out the same way we came in, but not until we run a little bumper. I've been your host, Randy Zimmerman. You can find me on Facebook if you look hard enough. You can always reach me at thezimcast@gmail.com. Anytime you have a suggestion for a show, anytime you want to contact me or you have a problem or whatever, I can leave your name out of it. I'd be happy to address it on a future broadcast here at the Indie Comics Network. We have a great variety of shows, most of which you saw in the trailer at the start of the show. So definitely check that out. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, please go over there and do that. Hit that bell for notifications, hit that like button, hit that love button. We appreciate any interaction, especially over on YouTube right now. It just helps the algorithms and helps hopefully give a chance for YouTube to leave us the hell alone and to treat us seriously. We've got the views. We don't have the subscribers. That's the thing. So go over there and subscribe. Tell your friends to subscribe. Tell your friends about the shows you see here. We really want to try to be helpful for you, especially if you're in this business or working in this business, to help you along. Because if the art form is great, we'll be right there with you. And like Brian's company is, Rising Tide raises all boats. We want to help everybody in this business. Please leave this business in better shape than what you found it. Stop tearing down our icons and start telling good comics. Start making good comics, or work hard to make better comics. If you have a campaign out there that you need fulfilled, need to ship it out, if you go over to Gemini Comic Supply, over at GeminiComicSupply.com, you can get these Gemini mailers that'll actually, most of the time, majority of the time, survive the postal service. As the postman move your packages from point A to your campaign patron's mailbox, and gets them there in the safest condition possible. On your way out the door from buying your Gemini mailers, you need Gemini mailers to ship them out safely, competently, with a level of confidence. On your way out the door, use the coupon code RAGIN10, RAGIN, the number 1 and 0, and they'll knock 10% off of your order of Gemini mailers. And they offer a wide variety, sizes of Gemini mailers for you to ship out with as well. So, folks, deeply appreciate you. We're going to pass that 2-hour mark, which means that we're going to be in trouble. So, we've had some conflict problems between Facebook and StreamYard and YouTube or whatever about keeping 2-hour programs on, especially over at Facebook. They've been really annoying lately. I guess they figure if you're sitting there watching a podcast for 2 hours, they're not selling you enough stuff. So,
yeah.
But anyway, folks, take care. We need to run. We're going out the same way we came in. Any last words from anybody as I scroll down? Nasvidanya. Buy independent and alternative comics, especially ours. We shall see you soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
What was that? This is not a charade. We need total concentration. Now, once again, this time, with you.
How dare you?